Time for the final round of the points-paying season for the Washington, D.C. Region Virtual Racing League here at the Hungaroring, a Formula One track, but tonight we'll host GT4 Racing for the final round of the point season. Not the final round of the season quite yet. We've got one more round up next week, but Connor, first up, we got to finish out our season before we can have one more fun run next Wednesday. My name is Kyle Heyer, joined by Connor Horn. Connor Horn is in good health. I clearly am not. Feeling very under the weather here this week, but going to struggle through it with everybody tonight, so bear with me as we tackle our last points round of the season. Connor, welcome aboard. Hungaroring, brand new track, lots of new challenges for the drivers here tonight.
A lot of challenges tonight. Obviously, you're challenged with your health. These drivers are challenged with how to figure out how to pass. I've seen a lot of inability to pass in practice. This is a track that's kind of notable for that. It's been nicknamed the Monaco without buildings because obviously there's no buildings and you can't really pass here. So these drivers have been working all practice session long trying to figure out how to get it done. We'll see if they can figure it out during the race as well.
Round 8 is the final one for the points here this season. There's a look at the track map. We'll have a bit of a more detailed look there in just a moment. Again, my name's Kyle Heyer, joined by Connor Horn. And you mentioned it, Connor. They call this place the Monaco without buildings because it is so challenging to pass, located in a small village with a population of just under 7,000 people, constructed back in 1986. And again, there is that phrasing that you pull out. It is certainly a challenging racetrack to pass. It's going to be an interesting one. Here is a look at the track map for tonight here, Connor. 14 corners, 4.4 kilometers. And you see it's a Formula One track. It's got all the standard Formula One track bits and features, those long sweeping corners, a couple sharp hairpins to test the brakes, and a couple long straightaways as well. So the slipstream could be a factor between turns 4 and 6 and 14 and turn 1. But that final sector, where turns 12, 13, and 14 are, that is going to be a very cumbersome section in a 3,000-pound GT4 car.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult to get through there on your own. You have to get through there very well with a chance to either gain a position down into turn number 1 or at least be able to defend your position down the front straightaway. You see this track map, there's not many passing zones. You kind of got turn 1. Maybe if you have a good run out of turn 1, you could try something in turn 2. And then pretty much after that, it's a lost cause. You'd be very risky to try something in turns 4 or not the hairpin, excuse me, but the chicane in 6 and 7. Don't really want to try anything there. And then you really are going to have to wait a long time to have to get back to another driver to pass them again. It is going to take a long time for these drivers setting up passes tonight.
And a long time to qualify. We've got practice finishing up here in just about 50 seconds. We're going to get about 10 minutes to lay down some qualifying times on the board. Quick update on the points situation. The drivers that are at the pointy end of the points: Paul Darling, Andrew Pilata, DJ Alessandrini, and Ken House-Seal. Morgan Burkhardt is in 5th, but Paul Darling leads those standings. And he, looking down the order, where is Paul Darling at the moment? He's 2nd. DJ Alessandrini is in 6th. And both of those drivers and many others are in that Porsche Cayman 718 GT4 Club Sport. That's been the car of choice all season long. Once drivers made that choice, they had to stick with it. That's why you only see a handful of McLarens and pretty much no BMWs.
And this is going to be one of the big tracks for the Porsches. They've really had the advantage all season long, not just because of numbers, but it just seemed like we've gone to a lot of tracks that fit their style. And this is probably one of the better tracks for that. A short and a track that you kind of have to wheel around here. You need to throw the car around in certain places because of how small of a track it is. And this Porsche, it could definitely do that. Much better than the BMW, better than the McLaren that has the rear downforce issue. It's no surprise that it's the most popular car.
So with qualifying underway now for the final points round of the season, quick update on where we are and where we are going. There will be a spring season after the new year, so pay attention to the DC Region Facebook page to know what's happening. Next week, though, we go to the Indy Road Course with GT3 machinery for our last race of 2021. Cars on track now as we head down into turn number 1. Now, Connor, this is a very hard track to pass at, but that means that it's a pretty good lapping track. There's a lot of varying challenges throughout this lap and a lot of areas to gain and lose time. So I think we're going to see drivers be pretty sendy in this lap just to try to get as good of a time as they can. And one of those drivers I would love to follow would be DJ Alessandrini and Paul Darling, again, those championship contenders, but also Matt Waldbaum in this number 2. He has been sort of a wild card because he's been up in this mix and runs essentially with Paul Darling and DJ Alessandrini, but hasn't quite been able to best any of those drivers on a week-in, week-out basis, but he always has that potential.
Yeah, he's had the potential. We saw it last week in the 45-minute race at Watkins Glen. He was running top 5 before an early incident forced him out, and he looked like he had really good speed. He was making up positions early and often. So we'll see what he can do this week. This is the highest I've seen him up the practice boards all season long from my recollection. So I'm excited to see what he can do here. And just a quick mention, you mentioned it, this is not a great track for passing, but it's definitely a fun track for lapping. It's so many twists and turns that you have to take very fast. You got to have a good flow to get around a track like this. One of those tracks where the flow that you have makes the entire difference. It's very fun once you get that flow down.
As we see Matt working through turns 13 and 14, one of the other discussions that we have to have anytime we come to a Formula One circuit, Connor, that's track limits. Anytime you run wide or run off the course, you'll get yourself one of those iRacing 1Xs, and they're fairly easy to get around here at corner exits in a couple of places. So you got to keep your car on the black stuff here in qualifying so that those times count. Otherwise, once you get to the race, it's essentially a free-for-all. You can utilize a couple of those off tracks if you need to. I don't really recommend doing that lap after lap, but you can kind of use them here and there as a non-renewable resource to gain a little extra time.
Yeah, definitely. If you need to use it on the first lap to avoid an incident or just pass someone from the lead straight up, as we saw in Abu Dhabi, you can do that, no doubt about it. But we will see drivers trying to utilize getting outside the boundaries of the track to just gain some time in the race. Obviously not qualifying, cannot do that. We'll see if the drivers qualifying right now, how strict they try to be with being, just neat and tidy. I'm wondering to see how many people force the issue a little bit too much here.
Waldbaum takes the curb there at that nice little kink. There's a nasty curb on the inside, but you can kind of launch it and ramp it. Another driver we got to keep an eye on, Kyle Herbson, the number 89, as he comes across the line. And you'll note that a lot of the front runners, DJ, Paul, Jack Chrissy, Jamison Huffman, they have not even gotten on the racetrack yet here, Connor. Their plan in the past has always been to wait out qualifying. I'm surprised more drivers have not caught on to that and stick around in the pits a little longer to get a clean track at the end of the session when everyone else has already exhausted their lap opportunities.
Yeah, I'm also with you. I'm surprised no one's even done that, or at least tried going with Alessandrini and Darling, following them for a couple laps on their hot laps, see what they're doing differently, see if you can learn from them a little bit. I'm very surprised no one's even tried that. It seems like Darling and Alessandrini are always on their own, and they're able to make it work, constantly starting on top row pretty much every single week in, week out. So we'll see if something changes this week, but it's been pretty surprising that no one's made the switch.
Had a look at David Graver going for a loop there a minute ago. Ken Halseal on track. He's one of the front runners that is electing to go out early here in this qualifying session and comes into the night. I believe he was fourth. Yes, fourth in the point standings with an average finish of 8th. The front three, however, have an average finish of 2nd, 3rd, and 2nd, respectively. Connor, that's pretty impressive that those front three have essentially put themselves in a different zip code coming into this last race of the season.
It's definitely been a big three this season. Alessandrini's been dominant, but Paul Darling's been on his tails and has been able to beat him multiple times. And Andrew Pilata, it seems like all season he's been right behind him, and it seems like he's been gaining on him week in and week out. He almost got the win at Watkins Glen, just couldn't pull it out, but he's improved every single week and gotten closer and closer to Darling and Alessandrini. And I'm excited to see what he can do this week, see if he can close in even more and maybe get him for a win. Here's
a car that we like to put some focus on. Marcus Montenegro in the number 71, running one of the few McLaren 570S GT4s. There are not a ton of them out there, but this is a car that a couple people switched from early in the season. And I think at Road Atlanta is when it scared a few people away, Connor. They have a lot of high-speed instability, and maybe some of that stems from the fact that the McLaren 570S in GT4 form is the most street car-like of any GT4 out there. It's essentially a street car with a roll cage, whereas the Porsche or the BMW, much more motorsports DNA injected in those two cars.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Much, kind of more of a wicked car, no doubt about it. And like you were talking about, Road Atlanta was just a wake-up call for a lot of guys who initially were running the McLaren. I think Jack Chrissy was one of them who spun once or twice in Road Atlanta. Same corner as well. The downhill turns in those McLarens, it just seemed like they did not have the rear downforce capability to stay stable. And we saw a lot of loops at Road Atlanta and the week after. So we saw a lot of drivers make the switch. We were close to double-digit McLarens. Now we're not even close. Jack Christie made the switch. A few others as well. Will Robbins has stayed loyal to the McLaren fan base. And I don't know how many others. There might be only 2 out here. No, Louis Alessi is out here as well. So at least 3 McLarens, 4 with Sam Scott. But it's definitely lost popularity because of how many incidents there's been.
You're right, and we were having a look there at a couple of drivers that made that switch. How about Matt Waldbaum top of the board in the number 2, and Evan Schickel in second, Todd Rushing in third, and Sam Scott in the 98. He's another one of the drivers in the McLaren out here this week. Now, this is an interesting one. Sam Scott, at one point here in this series, was consistently at the top of the order. This season, we have not seen a whole lot of Sam Scott. I wonder if some of it has been learning the challenge of this McLaren 570S GT4, but I just think there's something missing lately with Sam Scott. He used to run alongside Paul Darling every single race, and now it seems like Sam is kind of fighting for scraps in the mid-pack, but a good qualifying effort here early at the Hungaroring.
I think a lot of it's just been inconsistency. I've seen a lot of times this season where he just hasn't had the handling under his car. Possibly could contribute to the McLaren being an unstable car, but it just doesn't look like he's owned that much this season. He's had the speed. He's made great charges from the mid-pack. It almost seems like his qualifying might be contributing to his lack of good finishes as he goes wide and invalidates another lap there. So it's been tough for him. He hasn't been able to be consistent in qualifying and hasn't been able to be consistent enough in the race to be higher up in the points or battling for higher positions. But he's looked well in practice from what I've seen, and he's getting the hang of it, just trying to get a little bit more capability under him in this McLaren tonight. So we'll see what he can do.
Kyle Herbst top of the board in the number 2. The number 89, rather. Matt Waldbaum, the number 2, in second by 0.3 of a second. 14 drivers have laid down times. Paul Darling is on track now. And I would take that to assume that DJ Alessandrini is as well, and indeed he is. Right behind Paul Darling is a car that is running Tom O'Gorman's previous Grid Life Touring Cup paint scheme. This is Tomo's 2020 livery on his S2000. There's Darian Taggart, who is in command of that. Now Darian working together with DJ. Paul on his own, or actually just ahead.
Other way around.
Other way around. DJ Alessandrini is on his own. Now that's a bit of a surprise. We've seen DJ and Paul sort of work together in recent weeks, but wonder if with the championship on the line here, they've split things up a bit.
We'll have to see here. They started off separately last week at Watkins Glen, and then Paul Darling lifted to get Alessandrini and him together. So we'll see what happens. Darling, a bit of a slide there. Very tough corner to keep traction in. That corner, a downhill left-hander. It's very easy to just lose the back end.
Should also keep a note on the time of day. We're going to be running into the tail end of the afternoon here at the Hungaroring, which means we'll have headlights pop on, and it will probably be very interesting towards the end of this. This track does not have night lighting. I don't think it's going to get dark, but it's going to be dark enough to be a factor, I think, as Paul Darling tucks in behind the 94 of Darian Taggart, maybe to get a tow here on the next lap around.
We'll have to see here what type of tow he gets. I don't know how much it's going to help because you really don't have much straightaway to work with here. You have down the front straightaway into turn 1. You have a little bit of a stretch from turn 3 to turn 4. Slight stretch 11 to 12, but that's pretty much it. I really don't know if this is a track where you want that much slipstream. You really only want it for a short period of time, and otherwise you want clean air to be able to get through these corners as best as possible.
It did put Darian Taggart P6. That's something to note. Meanwhile, Matt Waldbaum back to the top of the board over Kyle Herbst by 37 thousandths of a second. Very tight at the top, a 151.61 to a 151.65 to a 151.71. So all very tight within a tenth of a second amongst those top 3. And Sly Stafford goes 18th quick. DJ Alessandrini has yet to put in a time, but he's working through the middle sector of the racetrack now and still has plenty of time to get a lap. Ken Ausile has also not put in a lap. He was out here early, but might have just invalidated a handful of laps and not had time to put a legal one down just yet.
Yeah, that was surprising. It looked like he was out there for a few laps, but I guess not. Quick note, Evan Schickel, Ken Ausile actually just gone 4th position, a 51.796. He just put that lap down, so put him P4. Only 4 drivers in the 51s. And they're tenths ahead of everyone else who's not in the 51, so very good laps by those guys. But here comes Alessandrini in the final corners. Yeah,
DJ Alessandrini in the number 61 through turns 13 and 14. going for yet another victory here this season. Accelerates out of turn 14 up onto the front straightaway. And across the start-finish line, it's going to be 152.396. That's only going to put him 8th best. So he'll definitely go and try to run another lap. Paul Darling is headed to the backside of the course now, following the 94 of Darian Taggart.
Darling has yet to put in a clean lap, so he's invalidated a couple as well here.
Yeah, Paul Darling is on lap number 3 of his attempts, but has not yet put a time on the board. Oh, really deep. Taggart a little early on the brakes there. That's going to cost Paul just a little bit of time as he had to lift for confidence.
And it's so easy to invalidate a lap here. You can't, Taggart's going to try to let him by here, which he does. It might be a little too late.
Yeah, that was a little
we'll
awkward.
See here.
That was
very awkward. It looked like he was lifting on that short stretch and just kind of caught Darling off guard. But quickly, it is so easy to invalidate a lap because all you have to do is put your tire over the red and white curbing, kind of just like Paul Darling just did, and you probably will get your lap invalidated, but it does not get invalidated, so it was clean. A 51.903 puts him P5.
Yeah, 5th quick for Paul Darling, and again, the track limits, as I mentioned, they are not necessarily the same everywhere, which it is how iRacing decides to set them up based on how the track is driven in the real world, for the most part. I think there's a couple exceptions to that at places like Circuit of the Americas and things like that. But I was not here last week, Connor, but I'm sure that track limits was at least a little bit of a discussion. Although at least how Watkins Glen is set up, it's pretty much set up the way it should be. And I don't think that there would have been a lot of penalties in relation to running wide and trying to gain time.
Yeah, it was touched up a little bit, but there's really not many places on the boot layout to really extend Watkins Glen. You go over to red-white curbing, it's a 1X, but you really don't gain a lot of time doing that out of turn number 1, and there's really nowhere to do that on exit until you get the exit of the boot. Even then, you can't extend it too much. So it didn't really come into play. It really only came into play when we had lap traffic come into play for the race lead, but for the most part, they did not really affect much of the racing. We'll see how much it affects racing this week, because you have a lot of corners with a lot of runoff, and those 1Xs, we'll see how far they carry a lot of drivers.
Murphy Nichols on track here. Great looking livery on that Force Racing number 5 in the Porsche Cayman 718 GT4 Club Sport. And Murphy has not yet put a lap down on the board, so he'll have to get one in the final minute and a half here of qualifying. Paul Darling now on his own. No draft assistance from Darian Taggart, who sits behind him. And Alessandrini down in 9th. Now, I have to wonder, I've been chatting with DJ outside of iRacing circumstances for the last couple of weeks. He has not spent a lot of time in iRacing. He spent a lot of time playing Halo. That's a game that he used to travel and compete in competitively, and he's kind of caught the Halo bug again recently. But that does seem to have affected his qualifying pace. He would almost always be in the top 3. But a track like the Hungaroring that I'm sure DJ isn't particularly fond of, and combined with his newfound love for a game he used to play, it is definitely affecting his performance here.
Well, it's been a week since Watkins Glen, and he came out victorious there, and he qualified very well there. So unless he's played Halo 24/7,
I mean, it would not be that far off of realistic to say that.
Oh, man. But it's not too far-fetched. It's not too surprising because it is a new track. A lot of drivers not familiar with it. I can't imagine Alessandrini really is familiar with it. So it's almost like an even playing field for a lot of drivers. He still has a lot of skill, so he's still going to be at the near the front of the pack, but it's definitely not accustomed to what he usually is. But even playing field, sort of, you got some drivers who might be accustomed to this track a little bit more. F1 experience in the racing games, that could come into play as well. People who memorize this track and know how to get through corners potentially a little bit better than others, that could come into play as well.
That's a great point to make, that drivers that follow F1 or at least play F1-based games will have a lot of familiarity with this track. DJ did jump up to 5th place in the final moments there. That is a little bit more on par with what we were expecting to see out of him. So maybe that was just the Halo was just increasing his reaction times for the Hungaroring. This is our final points-paying round of the season. You're watching Sim TV and the Washington, D.C. Region Virtual Racing League. Again, my name's Kyle Heyer, joined by Connor Horn. You'll note I sound absolutely awful this week. I am ailing and not feeling very well after a week out at the Performance Racing Industries trade show. I have had awful luck with trade shows and coming home very sick. I got COVID-19 after SEMA, and now whatever this is, not COVID-19 after PRI. So I'm going to just strap an iPad to a wheelchair and send that instead of myself every time we go in the future.
That would probably work out pretty well. Maybe you're just sick because you missed Watkins Glen and you were disgusted with yourself.
That could be. I was real sad about having to miss that last week for PRI, but we did use Watkins Glen in Grid Life's PRI activation, and that was really fun. But besides the point, we're ready to go racing here today at the Hungaroring. Again, this is the final points-paying round. Championships on the line here at the top of the order. It's Paul Darling, Andrew Pilata, and DJ Alessandrini that are fighting it out. We're not going to know the point situation until basically after the race is complete, so you'll have to check the DC region social media for more information on that once the event is over. All right, 2 short races here, Connor. Sprint races is how this has gone in the past. Mostly Porsche Caymans, a sprinkling of McLarens, and I don't think I see a single BMW in this field here this week.
There's Sly Stafford is in the field, so he just I don't think he's loaded in yet, but he was in this field. He qualified back in the 21st position, so we'll wait for him to load up. But one thing I'm interested in seeing is how this start is going to be, because we've usually had pretty organized starts because you always have the same top 3. You got Alessandrini, Darling, and usually Andrew Pilata, but that is not the case. Not Waldbaum, Kyle Herbst, Devin Schickel, Ken Halseal all beat Alessandrini and the rest. Alessandrini 5th, rushing 6th, Darling back in 7th. And I'm not sure if Andrew Pilata even made it tonight. I do not see him. But those main 2 who are usually on the top row going to have a little bit of a different look on the grid today.
There's a look at the weather, just as it's been most of the season. Mid-70s, humidity just around 50%. Nice day for racing. 10-mile-an-hour wind out of the southwest. Sly Stafford, John Williman, Kevin Zhu do not take the grid. They might start from the pits. Hairpin turn 1, Connor. A lot of calamity opportunity there, especially if you're mid-pack. So as we approach turns 13 and 14, it's time to go racing. The pace car is going to make that hard right onto pit lane. And it's time for the season finale of the Washington, D.C. region Virtual Racing League from the Hungaroring. Matt Waldbaum on pole, Kyle Herbst in second. And now green flag flies. We're racing in Hungary. Contact already. One car sliding in the background. And trouble in the back. Carlos Pratt is the one that's in the fence. His race is over before it even started, but the front runner's down to the first corner. Waldbaum and Herbst are clear. Here comes Schickel up the inside, though, for second. They're going to touch, bang doors at the exit of turn 1.
A little bit of 3 wide action in the back there, but it seems like everyone's gotten through pretty clean, as other than Pratt, who didn't make it, as they're going to be side by side for the lead. Waldbaum protecting inside. 5 cars under a blanket, trying to find room to navigate. Almost contact. There is contact. That was Herbst and Alessandrini.
Trouble behind them. Paul Andrews in the 42 is slipping down the order, but up front, Waldbaum clears Schickel. He takes the lead away. Trouble. Todd Rushing is in the wall hard. And that's going to be almost terminal damage for Rushing. And Halseal, Alessandrini side by side. Give Halseal the preferred line. And spin in front of him. Schickel is going to lose it out of the second position.
Another front runner out. Just all these drivers losing it on their own. There's been no contact with Schickel or Rushing. They've just lost it on their own, and that's catastrophic for a race like this where it's going to be very hard to pass.
Yeah, cold tires, and he was already kind of wiggling and wobbling from jumping the curb significantly. But he's going to drop all the way back to 23rd. A lot of work to do now. Here's DJ Alessandrini now on Ken Halseal. This is a battle for 3rd. Herbst is in 2nd. Waldbaum leads the way. These races are not very long, about 10 minutes and 30 seconds left to go. 7 laps on the board, and the front 4 still under a blanket, as you mentioned, in those first couple corners.
All these drivers just trying to find a way to kind of navigate themselves around drivers and around the racetrack in general. Also, Andrini, one of those, was trying to do an over-under, maybe a crossover on Halseal, but couldn't find the room. He's already up to 4th because of some incidents, but that is only 1 spot gained for him so far, as everyone else finally sort of single-filed out.
Now, Paul Darling, Jack Chrissy, Darian Taggart all nose the tail, and it is a conga line of Caymans at the pointy end of the field. Adam Kobach in the 85, the first non-Porsche competitor, down at 8th place. Sly Stafford did join the race, started from the pits, but has found himself turned back around as we go back to Evan Schickel, overtaking Jamison Huffman down into turn 1, and Schickel has just made his first pass of many that it will take to get back to where he started.
Yeah, Huffman, I don't know where the damage came from, but we didn't see any, but definitely damage, and it's going to hurt the performance at a track like this where you need a lot of downforce and aerodynamic capability, as, like you were saying, Schickel's got a lot of ground to make up.
Adam Kobach spun in the number 85, and kind of a bad spot, too. Can't really see coming over that crest. Let's see what happened. And just got down into the corner, and it just steps out again. Cold tires, and this is why... Oh, trouble.
There's another spin. Who is that? That was Chris Harp. He was up in about the 13th position.
Yep, Harp will turn it back around. But I wonder if some of this has to do with cold tires here, Connor. The pace lap here at the Hungaroring is so short, you don't really get a great opportunity to warm up your tires and brakes like you do at some of the other tracks. So cold tires here catching out some drivers as we go back to the lead. And the 4-horse race for first place is on. Waldbaum, Herbst, Hausil, Alessandro, and you can throw Darling in that mix as well.
Yeah, another driver spun right after Harp. I think it was Brandon Hook, but like you were talking about, these short warm-up laps that iRacing put into the sim, it's pretty good, but at the same time, you need a warm-up lap to, as it's named, warm up the tires, and you get rid of that, you got a lot of drivers going into the first few turns on very cold tires, and it can be very treacherous, as we've seen. Yeah, so, you know, when you're driving by yourself or running an AI race or whatever, or having a fun race, sure, run a short pace lap, but when you're running in a league setting, and especially with cars that are as sensitive to cold tires as these, I have no problem running a longer pace lap at taking that extra 2 minutes just to make sure that I'm already up to temp by the time I have to put load on the tires. A lot of drivers being caught out by that here early, especially at a challenging track as Kyle Herbst has a fender inside of Waldbaum for that top spot. Sam Scott, Will Robbins trading spots back here, a couple of the McLaren buddies for 9th, but that lead is getting very volatile now. Ken Hausil watches from 3rd as the front 2 battle ahead of him. Well, Will Robbins, Sam Scott, they'll stay side by side, but this front battle getting pretty intense. Saw Kyle Herbst flashing the lights down into turn number 1, even though he wasn't really in position to make the pass. He said it. He got a fender there on Waldbaum, maybe a little bit more aggressive on brakes. As you see it again, very aggressive, slowing down the car over the curb. Probably an incident there, but he is gaining. Yeah, you're going to use every inch of the racetrack wherever you can get it here. You're carrying a lot of momentum to corner exits around here. Look how tight this is. You mentioned how tricky it is to pass and how they call this place the Monaco without buildings, and it's showing itself to be just that. Look at these drivers all stacked on top of each other. This is going to make a very interesting but potentially frustrating race here today. Hoffman had another off somewhere, but he got it back going, but this is going to be very frustrating for the drivers. This might be the tightest track they've gone to all season from what I can remember. You're going to have to really dig deep in your bag of tricks to set up a pass, and then making it's another thing. But Kyle Herbst, right now, he's working on defending against pretty much the entire bulk of the top 10 as he is starting to lose touch with Matt Waldbaum in these tight corners. Maybe a little bit more of a straight line capable car compared to the leader Waldbaum, but he is having to ferociously defend against Hausil and the rest. Well, perhaps we underestimated or underrepresented the importance of qualifying today, because Matt Waldbaum in this number 2, he started up front and he's just been able to defend, and if you can defend in a few key areas, it's pretty much impossible for the drivers behind you to get by, and Matt sets a pretty solid lap time that time through and gains a couple tenths of a second on Herbst and others, but it's going to be a real challenge for anyone to successfully launch a pass on not just 1 but 3 or 4 cars. So if you started 5th on back, it's going to be a long day in a short race to move your way forward. It's going to be a real challenge as we watch these guys dive down the hill again. Trying to look at the biggest mover. One person who's figured out how to pass here is Morgan Burkhardt, who's gone 26th all the way to the 11th position, actually battling for the 10th position right now with Sam Scott, so he's made his way up through their field very quickly. Yeah, great start for Morgan Burkhardt. Thanks for catching that. That's a phenomenal drive. And running his way towards the top 10 has Sam Scott to dispose of next on the list. A couple drivers that had some other issues we didn't quite mention. Alex Smirnov in the number 300 had to spin a couple laps to go. Has moved his way up to 18th, and the 23 at David Graver spins behind him in the number 23 Porsche, so he'll have to turn it back around and go again. Say it's a tough spot to be turned around, but there's really not a good spot to be turned around in here. There's a lot of blind corners at a track like this with some sneaky elevation change, so you gotta pick wisely where you spin, because either way, it's probably not gonna be a good place. Yeah, Burkhardt just got by Sam Scott. Let's take you back and have a look at how that happened. Looked like Sam Scott ran wide at the exit of the chicane, opened the door for Burkhardt, and down the inside he went for 10th place. So it was more of a mistake by Sam Scott than an advance by Burkhardt, but either way, pass complete, and move the number 17 up inside the top 10. Another one of those inconsistent moments by Scott where he shows pace but just can't complete the race fully as he loses position just because of a mistake there, as we got the run into turn number 1. Matt Waldbaum already trying to break the draft as Kyle Herbst is not going to follow him, as he's still preoccupied with Ken Halseal, and he's preoccupied with Alessandrini.
Yeah, Waldbaum just ran his best lap of the race, but so did Kyle Herbst. So those front two really running solid lap times. But Halseal and Alessandrini, this is perhaps a very interesting situation between these two cars, because I think Halseal's not in a bad spot. I think DJ would rather be third than fourth, obviously, but I think you're in a decent spot where you can advance the lead from third if the front two collide. But DJ wants to move forward. I think Ken would be fine here, so he might be playing defense as well as offense at the same time, whereas DJ is just playing offense at the moment, and his bandwidth is capped at the move forward part.
We'll have to see here what happens. Alessandrini, as you said, they're kind of in a bit of a line here, as Herbst is really, you got Herbst and Halseal both doing offense and defense, where Diaz Alessandrini, he's got to gap to Paul Darling. Darling hasn't been able to close in as much, so Alessandrini can just do whatever he wants, push wherever he wants, and just try to make some aggressive passes because he has the room to.
I will tell you one thing, the lack of passing, certainly this is what NASCAR would call the eyeball test, right? I mean, everyone's packed on. Oh, spin! Herbst out of second place, and Alessandrini runs wide, and so Darian Taggart gets into it as well. And just like that, in the blink of an eye, things can shift dramatically. What happened?
It looks like he just spun all on his own here.
Trying to grab him on the replay. I don't know how he ended up where he did, but
Seal was close, but I don't think he was hitting range.
No, he just spun. DJ does a great job missing him, but then Taggart spins all on his own. They didn't actually make contact, but certainly spin at the same place. Now, if iRacing simulated an oil slick, I'd be suspicious that there was one out there. They just lost grip.
I've seen drivers in practice lose it in that corner. You try whipping it to the left to just get the right-hander, the apex of the right-hander just right, and it looked like Herbst just did that a little bit too hard, and that contributed to a spin. And also looked like Taggart did the same thing. I don't even think Taggart spun trying to avoid. I think he just made the same mistake. Yeah,
you're right. And due to their really solid first couple laps, they've only dropped to 6th and 9th respectively. So that wasn't catastrophic for them. But DJ Alessandrini had to avoid the spinning number 89 and now drops into the clutches of Paul Darling and Jack Chrissy, and has just lost touch with Ken Halseal, who can focus forward on the race leader. Matt Waldbaum is the ticket to victory lane tonight. If he can get by that yellow and black Porsche, he would be holding a checkered flag. He's only going to have one more lap to do it next time by.
Just trying to look at some more big movers. Murphy Nichols, another one of those. He started 30th. He's gotten all the way up to the 16th position. And going back to Burkhardt, he's pressuring Taggart, who's severely heated up his tires because of that spin, trying to get another position into the top 10.
Yeah, so Taggart under fire right now. Morgan Burkhardt has had a phenomenal drive, as you pointed out. And it's not over just yet. We're running out of time, but I think he's got one more on the chopping block. And Matt Waldbaum has been picture perfect for this race. We had a lot of pressure in the early moments, Connor, but never cracked due to it, so he remains out front. And will be coming to pick up the white flag this time through with a 1.3 second gap over Halseal. Then it's a little ways back to find Alessandrini, Darling, and Chrissy, the rest of the top 5. Evan Schickel has just spun. Let's have a look at how that happened. Same thing, just gets loose. I think he might attack the grass on corner entry.
That's the second spin of a day for Schickel, and that was another case. He whipped it left, trying to get the angle for the right, and just too far that time. Into the grass he went.
Yep, just looped it around, turned it backwards, easy to do. So Matt Waldbaum comes across the start-finish line, picks up the white flag, and Halseal gained 0.4 of a second in the final sector. But even if he does that again, I don't think he's going to have enough time to get there without a mistake from Waldbaum, who has been pretty much flawless so far.
Yeah, he's put the car in the right spots pretty much all race long. Herbst looked like he might have used the tires up a little bit, trying to get to him. Jack Chrissy almost made contact with Paul Darling there into that corner. That was a turn 2, I believe, but they did not make contact. But he did, Waldbaum, he did have to fend off Herbst for a little bit there. Herbst was giving it everything he got, it seemed, but Waldbaum had all the answers.
Now Paul Darling hounding DJ Alessandrini. DJ has not been fighting for the lead. It just goes to show you how challenging it is to make passes here. But into the chicane for the final time. Paul offsets the car to the right, closes in on DJ, takes a bit more curb, try to shorten up the racetrack, touches the grass on corner exit. And this is going to come all the way down to the last few corners for these two, I think.
But where does Darling try to make the pass? There's really nowhere to do it. He loses a little bit of time there, washes out of the corner a little bit. Now has to gain that time back, plus make the pass.
Running out of corners. Only a handful left for Paul Darling to jump on the podium here. Maybe a bit of a slipstream down the straightaway. Not enough to pull up alongside. And last couple corners, Ken Ausil chucking the car in to try to gain some time, and he is making inroads, but just hundredths of a second. He needed tenths. But Matt Waldbaum, qualifying paid off for him. Started on pole. He will come out of turn number 14 in the Hungaroring. Race number 1 goes to Matt Waldbaum in the number 2. Checkered flag for the number 2. Ken Ausil second, DJ Alessandrini third, then Darling and Chrissy round out the rest of your top 5. Still battles coming to the checkered. Burkhardt just got by Darian Taggart. That puts him 9th after starting the race all the way back in 26. What a drive.
And it was a great pass for 9th position, too. He threw it up the outside, and I believe that was that might have been turn 11 or turn 12. That was into turn 12. He went around the outside, and it turned into the inside in turn 13. That was an incredible pass by Burkhardt.
Kobach and Schickel drag race back to the line, 10th of a second. Kobach wins 14th spot. Murphy Nichols in the number 5. We documented his climb forward. David Graver spun around again on the final lap. This has been a race to forget. Started 23rd, will end 25th or worse. And Carlos Pratt, right at the drop of the green flag, spun it on the opening straightaway. And it's not gone much better since then. But for the drivers up front, really, really close racing there, Connor. But you could tell it is a challenge to get a move done here.
Yeah, not sure what was happening with Pratt and Graver, excuse me, there. But it was definitely an interesting first few laps, no doubt about it. It seemed like everyone was trying to get a little bit too much out of their cars. We saw a lot of self spins, really not much contact. We didn't really see a lot of contact between any drivers, which is kind of not accustomed to what we're seeing on these frantic first few laps in these sprint races. But we didn't see a lot of contact, just a lot of self spins, drivers losing it on cold tires and drivers losing it on grass and just trying to get too much out of specific corners. So we'll see if that carries over into a 24-minute feature. That's
a good point. I mean, we've seen this season has been remarkably what I would call hands-on. A lot of fenders and a lot of fender banging. In the past, that has been really at a minimum here, but this season, for whatever reason, the competitiveness and the closeness of the field in these GT4 cars has lended itself to some dramatic moments. But this race in particular, fairly clean from a car-to-car contact standpoint. I don't recall seeing anything more than a side-by-side door bang maybe on the first lap or so. Beyond that, it was all self-spins, as you mentioned.
And it was a lot of elevation change corners that we saw that happen, and really down the downhill turn number 2, where it's right after where F1's first DRS zone would be. We saw a lot of drivers spin there. Also at a turn number 3, the corner right after it, the right-hander saw some spins there. We really saw spins everywhere, especially we also saw some key spins by Kyle Herbst and Darian Taggart in turn 11. So very interesting to see. It's a pretty treacherous track, not straightforward at all. It's not just straightaways. You have to really wheel these cars into these corners, and if you don't have the tires of the optimal temperature, it's very difficult to do so.
Warm-up period now for the next race, 4 minutes left, and there's a sight for sore eyes for BMW fans. Sly Stafford in the lone BMW M4 GT4. It is such a shame that this car is really not the car to have here in iRacing right now. It drives like a refrigerator box and has the aerodynamics of a Rhino, but it really is a cool-looking car, and I wish it was utilized more, not only in official sessions, but here in the series. No official plans for next season have officialized yet, Connor. I do know that a couple of the cars being considered are the TCR cars, which I am very hopeful will make it to at least a couple rounds next season, as well as the venerable Ford Mustang FR500S, which has been a classic and a standard that the series has just stuck with and gone to any time that it's needed in the past. That one of the last true H-pattern gearbox cars left in the simulator, and still requires all 3 pedals to upshift and downshift. Not a lot of those cars left in racing, Connor.
No, there's really not. Losing one in the Cup Series car, going to sequential, and it's definitely a fun car to wheel around. You really just have to be careful on everything, or else you're just going to blow the motor if you don't know how to shift it correctly. But it's a very fun car to wheel around, road courses, even some small ovals, it's pretty fun to wheel around. I wonder how they do on a Legends oval. That would be pretty wicked, but that would be very interesting. would be very fun to see those cars again, but also those TCRs are pretty fun to whip around a racetrack as well, and they can really produce some really outstanding racing. So either way they go, it's going to be a banger of a season.
Yeah, I think the DC region SCCA Virtual Racing League, they tend to choose cars that are somewhat transitional into professional racing. See, Stafford just chucked the car into the fence there. They tend to choose cars that are what I would call transitional into pro racing, right? I mean, a lot of times we run cars that you would see at your local, SCCA region, big bore cars, the Global MX-5, cars like that. But it seems like lately we've shifted to using more transitional cars like these GT4 cars, a step up in terms of power and weight from a lot of your grassroots level cars, but not quite full-blown top-level pro racing. They're generally a stepping stone. And the TCR is very much that, except for front-wheel drive cars. I think you'd argue that there's not really much beyond the TCR for front-wheel drive fans. But I do think that they represent a category of cars that is underrepresented in iRacing, which is those front-wheel drive touring cars. And there really is a place. When you start driving on a road course, on any road track, a lot of people begin on front-wheel drive because that's what's accessible to them. So it's really a shame that we don't have more front-wheel drive offerings here in iRacing, besides the Jetta, the Kia Optima, and now the TCRs.
Yeah, there really isn't much to go with, and the Jetta in general just really is very underutilized already. Other than the TCRs, there's really not many other popular options for those front-wheel drive. You really just have the TCRs if you really want a decent field. So it is a shame sort of to see them not as popular, but they're always pretty fun to drive and pretty handleable as well. And you can have a lot of fun in those things, whether you're racing with someone or just hot lapping for yourself. They could be a blast.
Yeah, one of the things I actually learned about when I was at PRI, I was talking to Caleb Bacon, who ran in SRO America's TC America series this past year in a Hyundai Veloster TCA car, which is kind of a low-power front-wheel drive car, but also has experience in the Hyundai Veloster TCR. And we had a conversation about iRacing's TCR offerings and how they drove, and he actually drove on a couple of our simulators. And he came away with the feeling that, yeah, they're pretty good. They have too much rear grip. And it took us a while to figure out. We were kind of brainstorming why that might be, because iRacing's history of making cars handle like cars is pretty good, at least as of late. It turns out that TCR machines have inherent understeer when you put sticker tires on all four corners. In the real world, you would never race a TCR car with sticker tires on the rear. You'd always run 4 or 5 race-old tires on the back and run them at very high pressures and very high toe out to get the car to slide around a lot more. So in iRacing, you can't yet put used sets of tires on the rear of the car. What you can do is crank up those rear tire pressures and crank out the toe out, and then the car slides around a lot more, and they really are a hoot when you set them up just like that.
You really don't know when iRacing is going to get that feature to put used tires on the car. That would be very good for a lot of series that you can do that in. The TCRs, that'd be interesting to do if you could do it even before a race. Maybe use the Q set that you used. That would be pretty interesting as well. But we haven't seen that from iRacing just yet because they're working on so many innovative ideas to put in this simulator. It'd be pretty cool if we could get that pretty soon. But I guess we just have to wait for sliding around TCRs naturally for now.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the features, putting on old sets of tires was almost a feature in this build. It was actually leaked in the release notes and then retracted later, and it actually might be implemented at some point mid-season, according to one of the devs. So there is a couple things that still could surprise us. I think one of the things that will be crucial to the TCRs in particular is being able to not only put old tire sets that you've already used on the car on the rear, but having a pre-worn option for those rear tires right at the beginning of a session so that you can simulate, really old, almost completely gone rear tires. You don't really use the rear tires a lot in a TCR car. They're just basically being dragged around. They don't need to be grippy in any way. You're not relying on rear grip at all. It's all done by those front tires. Rolling off now for our second and final race of the evening for the Washington, D.C. Region Virtual Racing League here at the Hungaroring. Again, my name is Kyle Heyer, and I'm joined by Connor Horn. If I sound different tonight, it's because I'm horribly sick and just powering through tonight. This will be my second to last stream before the holiday season. One more next week, GT3s at Indy Road. That will be for these guys next week, a non-points round just for fun. but going to struggle through 13 laps on the board here for this race, a little bit longer than race number 1. Waldbaum, Hausil, Alessandrini, Darling, Chrissy, your top 5. Green flag in the air. We're racing at the Hungaroring. The last race of the points-paying season is underway.
Another crash in the final corner. 3 drivers involved. Sly Stafford, David Graver, and another car there. That was Jonathan Crane. No, it was Carlos Pratt. Again, 3 wide into the first corner. Meanwhile, everyone trying to sort it out. Waldbaum's been passed. Hausil got the run, and he's going to get the lead, maybe. Waldbaum back to the inside.
Yeah, Herbst and Darling made a bit of contact there as well, but you're right, another last corner collision before they even got to the stripe, so that's not one to write home about necessarily. Here's Jack Chrissy to the inside of Herbst. That was really dicey. He spins. Everybody's going to scatter. This is going to be right in the middle of the pack. Look out. Gets clobbered once and twice. Now more cars involved as they scramble across the field. Gets clobbered again. And a big crash here. Marcus Montenegro also involved. Big damage on his McLaren. That was a big crash.
Montenegro was the first to hit him, and there was just nowhere for him to go. One of the, like we were talking about earlier, you can't really spin anywhere here and be safe, and Montenegro had nowhere to go. Yeah,
that big crash there, lots of damage. 5 or 6 cars involved in that, so that will be the crash that we had not yet seen. We were talking about how clean and without contact the first race was. Perhaps jinx this one just a touch. Now Alessandrini moves into second behind Waldbaum. Hausil drops to 4th. Herbst in the middle and 3rd now.
Trying to see how Seal must have gotten loose in a corner, maybe in the carousel leading up to the chicane, because he almost had the lead there, but just couldn't clear Waldbaum down into turn number 2, and Waldbaum had the bottom inside lane there, and he was able to maintain. And now Hausil has to get those positions back.
So Alessandrini trying to do what no one has done yet tonight, and that is take the lead away from Matt Waldbaum. And lap 1 complete, 22 minutes to go. We saw how challenging it was to make up ground and actually complete passes. But DJ hasn't had an opportunity to go for the lead just yet, and he's probably a little hungry. He's been denied at least a week. That's too long for DJ to go without a win. Here's Adam Koback now down the inside, having a look at Louis Alessi. Alessi's in the white and red McLaren, Koback in the orange and blue.
It's a pretty close move there. Meanwhile, Morgan Burkhardt swung it way wide out of turn number 1, maybe trying to get the positioning on Sam Scott. Going to send it into the downhill number 2. Can't go too deep there, else you're going to slide. Almost contact between those two. Scott's going to try to stick it to the inside. Tough to go too wide here. They'll make it work, though, and Burkhardt's got the move done. Yeah,
he'll use a little extra racetrack just to make that move a little safer. Here comes Alessi. Try to get up alongside Sam Scott. Scott really sideways in the McLaren. Bounces over the curbs on exit. Now here comes Koback, and 3 wide. No. That's not going to work, and Smirnov and Huffman are going to get collected. Another spin.
Oh, Wotek Hajicek also spun separately, but 3 wide's never going to work, especially at this track.
Yeah, that was a little bit of greed, I think, coming from a couple of those drivers. Let's have another look at how this formulated. The door just opens, and I think that's. I mean, he was there, but I think it just.
Yeah.
It's tricky. Hard to blame that on anybody, Connor. Just too many cars in too small of a space.
It was kind of set off by Louis Alessi just kind of checking up. They didn't know what to do. They were going too wide through there, but all of a sudden that 3rd driver drops back. You kind of just panic, and you're kind of in a bad spot already there. So it was just a tough instant to happen. But meanwhile, the battle for the lead heating up. You were talking about it earlier. If anyone's going to get the lead away from Waldbaum, it would be DJ Alessandrini.
See him setting up this last corner here, trying to apex a little later and get the throttle down sooner. It worked, but traction control chokes the power for DJ on that front straightaway, and Waldbaum ends up getting a better shot, but he's trying to break that draft now as they head down the front straightaway.
Lap car giving way, coming out of a pits. That was Todd Rushing, who almost came out at a bad spot. He'll let them by the top 5 or so. He'll come out in front of the battle for 5th position with Paul Darling down the inside of Robert Porter. He'll get that spot right back.
Ken Hausil got 3rd place away from Herbst as well, so move Ken back into P3. That was a notable pass because it will put him on the tailpipes of Alessandrini should those two get racy again. Here's Will Robbins on the outside of Darian Taggart and Robert Porter. Taggart moving forward nicely after his spin cost him a few spots in race number 1. And that is a tricky corner there, Connor. If you overcommit to the inside, that's going to be a bad time for everybody.
Yeah, and he had to undercommit there, and he's going to lose another spot to Morgan Burkhardt there. Nothing he could do there. He either backs out of that or causes an incident, and he chose to back out of it, which is, for his race, a smart decision.
I'm going to say that Hungaroring is the only track in iRacing that features iRacing's new tree model. The trees here look amazing. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, no, they're very good. Definitely better than the 2 pixels for something.
They look so good. Anyway, carrying on. Bit of a battle ahead of this group. Oh, that's Porter and Taggart that are fighting side by side in 2 different shades of yellow.
Is that a yellow? I'm not sure, but that's not the question here. That is yellow, excuse me. But they are battling to see who's the superior yellow color. As Taggart looks a little faster, Porter's dropped a few positions here. He dropped a position of Paul Darling. He's looking to maybe drop another position here.
Yeah, some people call, the color that you would get in like a highlighter package, like the standard highlighter color. People call that highlighter green, and I just want to smack people in the face every time. It's not green. It's literally
green.
Yellow. There is a highlighter color that is green.
It is green, and it's actually green.
And it's actually green.
I think these two, I can't tell if Porter's highlighter yellow or both these cars are sort of dancing around it. I can't tell.
He's got a, the green that Porter has is like it's got a little bit of actual green on it. It's not a ton, but I don't know.
This is a heck of a train they've got building up, though. Porter and Taggart battling. Morgan Burkhardt trying to get into the mix. Will Robbins, Sam Scott, Adam Kovac in the mix. 3 McLarens in a row there, surprising, but they're just losing touch.
Back forward, half a second between the 2 race leaders. And Hausil has not really been able to eat into the front 2 at all. They've been sort of stuck there for a while. And Huffman and Hadjisek, this is a battle for 17th place, the 989 and the number 11. These 2 kind of spun concurrently a couple laps ago. Now reigniting their battle for position.
Can't imagine you're too happy with each other, even though it was neither of their drivers' fault, just a racing incident. But I can't imagine there's a lot of good feelings between those 2. Trying to look back up at the front, it seems like every time Alisson Andretti gains some time in these tight corner sections, he loses a little because of a dirty air wash he gets. It just seems like it's a constant tug-of-war battle with this dirty air for Alisson Andretti.
Taggart and Morgan Burkhardt. How about Morgan Burkhardt? He started race 1 in 26th. Now he's up to 8th and going for 7th, and a little unsteady on the brakes there down to the inside of the 94, but now pulls even.
See if he tries an over-under here or just sticks it to the outside. Fakes outside, does try the over-under. Don't know if it's going to really work. Did not get the run he really needed there.
And up onto the front straightaway, 16 minutes to go. Now we've kind of got the procession that we expected. There's David Graver again in the 23. He's had a rough night tonight here at the Hungaroring. Hausil and Herbst battling for 3rd still. They've traded spots once or twice and remain nose to tail. Paul Darling, kind of a no man's land behind them, as Huffman and Andrews drag race into turn 1.
See who gets the better of who here. Dead even, actually, for this 15th position, as Wojtek Hadjisek just trying to look and hope they don't wreck each other in front of him. He's actually going to send it to the inside. Andrews wasn't expecting that one. They make contact. Yeah,
just a slight scrape there. Everyone's got their mirrors still, which is not something you can always say after some door-to-door contact here in the GT4s.
No, definitely not. We've seen a lot of mirrors fly off this season, no doubt about that, as Huffman is going to get the better there for that spot. Hadjisek was a heck of a send. Almost got it to work there. A little bit of bumping and banging, but just could not hold the power down and didn't have the positioning in turn 2.
Here's Taggart up the inside of Porter into the chicane. That's really tight. They're going to crash there. Porter gets up on 2 wheels and drops a spot or 2.
Yeah, that's not surprising. That's probably the worst place to try a pass there. Into that chicane, you can literally only fit 1 car through there, and even then, these cars can barely fit through there on their own, so that was just a losing battle for both drivers. Yeah, challenging moment, leading to some contact there. Both drivers will continue and go the right direction. Meanwhile, for the top spot, Waldbaum and Alessandrini still separated by a couple car lengths, but that car length count is coming down. It's now 0.3 of a second. Waldbaum was breaking the draft a little bit, continues to weave a little bit, but not severely. Alessandrini just not close enough for a lunge, unless he's feeling daring, which I wouldn't be too surprised about, but I don't think he's going to try it just yet. But you got to think, sooner or later, that dirty air with the tires degrading, just going to get worse and worse. How much more time do you have left to make this pass?
Yeah, that's one thing. This slightly longer race, you do have to worry a little bit about tire wear and fuel consumption and how that changes the balance in a car like this. As we approach the halfway point now in the next minute or so, I do think DJ's looking a little stronger now, and last time by was 2/10 faster. If he was 2/10 faster this lap, they'd come across the line door to door. It's just a matter of how you get alongside. You might have to do a bit of an aggressive send, kind of a Max Verstappen move to get down the inside, but otherwise you're going to be stuck here forever, I think.
Will Robbins and Morgan Burkhardt battle for the, trying to see the position is actually, I think that is maybe for the 7th position. He threw a bit of a block on Morgan Burkhardt there as these two battle. Sam Scott, Robert Porter, Adam Kovac in the battle as well. As that battle for the lead gets closer and closer when they get to sort of longer stretches of the track, but on these tight corners where you need all the aero, Alessandrini just loses all of it.
Robbins, Burkhardt, Sam Scott battling for 7th place. And this is one of those rare opportunities we kind of get to see the intermingling of different cars and their strengths. I think the Porsche was the car to have. It seems to be the most agile. And a track like this changes direction a lot on very flat surfaces, so you're left leaning on mechanical grip a ton. And some of those faster corners, Will Robbins and Sam Scott, that McLaren will have an advantage, but I do think the Porsche is the car to have here this week, but McLarens are hanging tough.
One thing that I haven't seen from the first race and so far in this race that I just saw right there, the race leader, Matt Waldbaum, had a little bit of a slide out of the final corner there. Kind of lost some momentum out of the corner to let Alessandrini close a little bit. That's the first sign of even any sort of mistake or just lack of handling that I've seen from Waldbaum all session, really.
So line astern now, the front 10 sort of all nose to tail, and the lead battle is on. There's only 2/10 between them, and there's a bit of a mistake there by Waldbaum. Didn't quite get down to the apex, and here comes DJ. Not quite enough room now. There is to put a fender in, but not enough to get it fully alongside. That was the first time we've seen a weakness from Waldbaum all night long. Missed the apex there by 2 feet, and Alessandrini was there to take advantage of it.
Turn 4, if you miss the apex, that's exactly what's going to happen every time. If there's a car by you, he's going to try to send it there because that's a weakness. That's a kind of a rare spot to get a free attempt at a pass like that. You can't afford to go wide there or else he's going to force it, and it could be a crash. It almost was a crash there.
Can Waldbaum hang on for 11.5 more minutes? That's a tall task, and there's some lap traffic on the horizon as well. While these two battle, Hausiel and Herbst are actually gaining a little bit of ground on them too, so it's not inconceivable that we could have a 4-horse race for first place by the time this race is over.
Paul Andrews had a bit of an incident from 17th on his own, but he keeps it going with damage. Will Robbins fell back a little bit, had a bit of a slide through turn 4 as well as all those 4 cars stay in a line, but the battle for the lead, like you said, heating up. Waldbaum flashing its lights. It's at Marcus Montenegro who they're coming up on. He wants him out of the way right away.
Yeah, he's all by himself and back in 25th. Last car in the lead lap. I don't think he'll put up much of a fight, but just where he gives up that spot could throw a wrench into things here, certainly.
Trying to look at some more battles. Had that 4-car line still, all in a row there as Waldbaum continues to flash the lights. All 4 of those. Sam Scott has actually gotten the best of this battle for 8th. Scott ahead of Porter, Robbins, and Kovac. Then a 3-car line. Louis Alesi, Murphy Nichols, Talis Sadiq, 12th through 14th.
Yeah, far from over. I mean, 10 minutes is almost half our race, so it's not like this is, done and concluded just yet. But Waldbaum and Alessandrini, this fight, it could take Alessandrini 5 laps to complete this pass, or he could do it in 2 corners. It really is just a matter of circumstance and where Waldbaum makes a mistake versus where DJ gains. I do think DJ is gaining in kind of a critical area. It's some of the slower corner areas where Alessandrini is closing in, and those are generally where your opportunities are. I think DJ's weakness is that he's not building up enough of a run into the slow corners that are after the long straights, which is where your best overtaking spots are.
Yeah, the real problem is through the section we're in right now, he's not staying close enough. He just loses a lot of time. That's the furthest I've seen him back in a while. He's just losing way too much time in these sort of S's after this chicane. And if he can't stay closer than that, he's really got to be on the bumper close to the bumper of Waldbaum through there, and he's lost a lot of time this lap. So unless he can make it up and stay close to him coming into the final few corners, I'm not sure how much of a chance there is for him.
9 minutes to go, and that's going to be approximately 5 laps worth of time. Other battles around the racetrack, Louis Alessi in the number 43, Tala Sadiq in the number 45. Crossover there at turn 13, McLaren versus Porsche. Sadiq again trying to kind of over-under this on exit, and he's going to get a power down a lot better than Alessi. Now down the front straightaway, we should see this pass formulate here.
See how much Alessi tries to defend here. Not much he can do, just kind of at the mercy of Tala Sadiq here as they'll go too wide into the first corner here. Sadiq goes way deep. He might be gone a little too deep trying to complete the pass, but he's going to make it stick. It was not too deep. It was brilliant by Sadiq, and now he has the position.
Yeah, took that right to the edge of the grip limit on the brakes and got that pass done. That was for 13th. Murphy Nichols just up the road for 12th, the next on the hit list. That was your closest battle at the moment. With the exception of Hadjisek and Smirnov. This is the 300 car running the kind of Corvette racing livery, and an awkward dive there on the 11 will open up the door for a pass.
Getting on Jameson Huffman, who had a bit of an off track, but he gets it back going. Note Murphy Nichols, he's up to 12th, made up about 13 spots in race 1, just hasn't had the same progress in race 2, but he got so far up the field in the first race, it's going to be hard to duplicate that with how high up he is. Same thing for Morgan Burkhardt, who's only gone up 2 positions, 9th to 7th after his charge. Yeah,
I just noted the dangling passenger side mirror on Smirnov's car. He's definitely had contact and will not have a lot of visibility out the right side of that car now, so that's something to consider. And we were talking about that earlier. It doesn't take a lot to knock that mirror off. Just well-timed contact in a bad spot will knock that thing loose.
Got 2 battles in 1 through 14. Montenegro and Todd Rushing battling for 25th. And Darian Taggart getting closed in on by Morgan Burkhardt has nowhere to go to get by these 2.
Yeah, this is a good battle here between Taggart and I guess that's Morgan Burkhardt in the 17 behind him with Marcus Montenegro, and you mentioned the battle that he is in right now with Todd Rushing. That pass is complete. No closer for the top spot.
Whoa.
That was a little awkward into turn 1, wasn't it?
That was very close. Rushing hard on the brakes. Burkhardt just almost couldn't get stopped in time, so that was almost a pretty big incident in turn 1. Looking back for the battle for 8, Sam Scott still fending off Robert Porter. These 4 have stayed close to each other. Those are McLarens of Robbins, and Kobach just can't hang on.
Oh, Alessi, trouble down pit lane. Wonder if there was a penalty involved there. Or did he actually stop? No, he just drove through, so I don't think that was for service. That was for serving a penalty. Not sure what for, but he'll drop down to 17th.
Yeah, that was a odd spot there. Not sure what happened there, but he will get back going eventually. Trying to look back up for the lead. Things are closing in a little bit, but really it's closing in the battle for second because Ken Halseal, last few laps, was gaining on Allison Drini, lost about 2/10 last lap. Kyle Herbst lost to Halseal, but all these 4 kind of converging on each other.
Another battle converging is the one for 9th. Robert Porter, Will Robbins, Adam Kobach, these 3 all right behind Sam Scott. This is a good little scrap for position. Murphy Nichols, no, that was just an internet continuity issue. I thought he had stopped on the track. He was not. We're moving back to Porter, Robbins, and Kobach, all 0.3 of a second between these 3 cars.
Ooh, Allison Drini just had a decent moment there out of the final corner. He's pushing hard to gain anything on Waldbaum out of these corners and almost pushed it a bit too hard there.
I think he did push it too hard. He lost 0.1 of a second doing whatever he just did. But now with 3 laps to go, 5 minutes left on the board, running out of opportunities, it is just so challenging. You're just nicking away time, 100th by 100th and not 10th by 10th like you need to be. Here's Adam Kobach trying to fake out Will Robbins into turn 1, but not close enough to offer a serious contention.
These guys just staying on top of each other, but Sam Scott's been able to hold strong, starting to pull away from Robert Porter finally. Porter backing up into Will Robbins here, so the battle for 9th could very well be on as Sam Scott starts to pull away.
And Murphy Nichols and Tala Sadiq were side by side working on passing, and they're still door to door as they head down into turn 2. That's a little dicey, actually.
Oh!
And a bit of a fender rub there. I think Sadiq pushed a little wide. Now we'll complete that pass on Murphy Nichols.
Murphy Nichols isn't scared of contact, flashing the lights. He isn't happy about it. He's not afraid to go, door to door, wheel to wheel with Sadiq for any incident or reason. So he'll probably charge right back at him here in a few laps if he can.
On board now with Will Robbins, watching the gyro cam. Very smooth driving from Robbins today, nicely done. Running 10th right now, finished the first race in 8th, so it'll be a consistent day, top 10s in both races for him. Chases Porter just up the road.
Will be the top 10 as long as he can hold off Adam Kovac. With this battle for 9th, it could get sort of stacked up if they're not careful.
Certainly could. Half a second between the two race leaders. This will be 2 laps to go this time by, and Alessandrini did gain a couple tenths of a second this time. If he could do that 2 more times, he'd be right to the rear tailpipes of Waldbaum. But now the draft pulls him in a little closer. If you're within a 10th and a half, you're within striking distance, but he's about 3 to 4 tenths back right now.
Yeah, you need to be within a 10th or 2. The 3 to 4 tenths, even half a second range, it's just too much dirty air to deal with, and you have to close in a little earlier. And you kind of need a mistake. He got the mistake through turn 4 and couldn't capitalize. That's why I was wondering, how aggressive should you be there? He was as aggressive as you can get, but maybe could have been a little bit more aggressive, push the issue into the chicane, because that could have been his one chance that he's going to get.
Sam Scott in the number 98 under fire now from Robert Porter and Will Robbins. This is going to get spicy before it does not. There's Robbins around the outside trying to carry a little bit more speed. There was their contact from behind. Kovac is in this mix.
Yeah, Sam Scott lost the position because he missed turn 1, so it's going to be difficult to get it back. He looked like he was pulling away from Porter, looked faster, but, he's going to have to pass him now. Goes way wide there. Will Robbins to the outside, can't make it work. Yeah, he almost contact.
Got balked there on corner entry. He couldn't really see where he was going and had an awkward moment trying to turn in and find the apex, and almost lost another spot to Robbins, as you noted. Only 2 more times through the chicane, and now only 1 more time now as they navigate their way through it. This battle far from over. Up front, though, fear that this battle may be, if Waldbaum is as consistent as he has been. Sly Stafford ahead of them, maybe the one thing that could throw a wrench in this mix. They might not catch him here on this straightaway unless Stafford pulls over and lets them by, and that could really mess up or throw Waldbaum off a rhythm. White flag.
Here we go, white flag is out. Sly Stafford not getting out of a way, but not giving draft, as he's now going to get out of a way pretty late there. Waldbaum, Alessandrini is the closest he's been in a few laps. We'll see if he can do anything with it.
Oh, Waldbaum off the apex just by a little bit early in the corner, got back down to it. He's been getting off of the corner so much better than DJ.
Ooh. Sam Scott's pit. He might have underfueled his car. Sam Scott can't make it to the end.
Oh, that's trouble for Scott, for sure. Well, will he service, or will be another drive-through penalty? That's another question.
I think question. Either way, catastrophic.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Jump over the curb through the kink for the final time for Waldbaum and Alessandrini. It's just not going to be close enough. You have to make a lunge at some point, give it one last go.
You really don't have the position to make a lunge until about, I'd say, turn 12 and maybe 13 and 14, but really other than those corners, it's an outside chance at best. He's close as he's been through this section for sure, but I don't think it's close enough to make any sort of lunge without there being contact.
He is really close now, 0.2 of a second, uses every inch of the racetrack. 3 more corners left for DJ Alessandrini. He pops out of line, he's deep on the brakes. Waldbaum doesn't flinch, gets a much better run out of turn 12. Now 2 corners left, 13 and 14 now. DJ is close. I just don't think he's going to have enough leverage to get up to Waldbaum in the last corner. Matt Waldbaum in the number 2 fights off a late race charge, and with pressure from behind goes 2 for 2, and he will sweep at the Hungaroring in the final round of the season for the Washington, D.C. region Virtual Racing League. Alessandrini second, Herbst, Hauseal, and Paul Darling the rest of the top 5. And no other major battles coming to the checkers besides Murphy Nichols and Jamison Huffman. This one could get a little exciting at the end of the race here.
Nichols holding on to it right now. Huffman's charged all the way to get back here after some incidents. And Tyler Sadiq, wonder if there's contact between him and Murphy Nichols, but either way, looks like Nichols has the spot.
Yeah, Nichols will come home in 11th. Big shout out to Morgan Burkhardt, who finished in 7th after starting 26th in race number 1. That was a fantastic climb forward. So checkered flag here at the Hungaroring, and with that, the race is complete. Let's have a look at our race results, shall we? And go over what happened tonight. Matt Waldbaum gets it done. 2 races, 2 wins for him, Connor. That was a phenomenal run and just never showed any signs of weakness. Only made a handful of very small mistakes, and no one was able to overcome them.
Had the least amount of passes today, which was pretty much 0. So I guess that'll go in as a good day for him. It showed this was probably the most important race for qualifying. We've seen, Paul Darling and Allison Drini be at the top pretty much all season long. And they got to the front and stayed at the front, but I think this was a real showing of how important the pole was today, because Waldbaum looked like Allison Drini could have been a little bit faster if he got in clean air, but he was in dirty air the entire race. Waldbaum had all the air, all the clean air he needed to just keep the position and defend when he needed to.
We're also going to raffle off a track night Track Night in America entry as well as part of the prizing for this season, so we're working on that at the moment, waiting for a couple of our drivers to make it here to talk to us post-race. Going through the rest of the order, we had 30 cars start total in tonight's event. A nice strong field all the way down to the end of the season. Bringing Kyle Herbston, who finished in 3rd in race number 2. But Kyle, in race number 1, you were 6th, so a bit of a gain in that second race, but it looked very challenging to pass. What was your experience out there tonight in the Porsche?
I think mostly it was just tire management, surprisingly. I mean, the first race, I kind of lost it trying to lean on the nose a little bit and figured out, the rear tires actually fell off a lot quicker than what I was expecting. So, the second race kind of teamed up with Ken. I mean, I think he had quicker pace, so I let him by, hoping to catch the front two, but they just had way too much pace. And then Ken being Ken, of course, gave me the third, even though he really deserved it.
So it sounded like tonight was really extremely difficult to pass. We talked in the pre-race about how this place is nicknamed Monaco without buildings. It was so tricky to pass. What was that like from your perspective? Did you have to set up things a little bit differently, or was it just a track that you have to run single file most of the time and focus all your passing efforts on 1 or 2 corners?
Yeah, I think you explained it pretty well. I mean, you just have to really go single file and expect someone in front of you to make a mistake. I mean, especially in the first race. Matt going into turn 1 would get late on the brakes, and especially in the GT4s. I mean, once you get in the ABS, you're not going to stop anywhere. So I think it's just trying to, put pressure, probably show your nose in a mirror and hope someone makes a mistake and you can kind of capitalize off of it.
All right, well, Kyle Herbst brings home a podium in race number 2. Kyle, congratulations, and hopefully we'll see you next week in the GT3s at Indianapolis Road.
Of course. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Move on now to DJ Alessandrini, who came up just shy of winning race number 2.
Hello.
We were just talking to Kyle Herbst. Hi, DJ. And it looked extremely challenging to pass tonight. The Hungaroring, a Formula 1 circuit. We all know that these are challenging racetracks to pass on, but really difficult tonight. What was your experience like in the Porsche?
Just the track limits here that iRacing imposes is just really strict. So it was really just trying to maintain not getting DQ'd, because we only had 14 incident points, and I swear if I was driving this track the way I wanted to, I think I would have had 5 every lap. So I would have only lasted 3 laps, like really letting the car fly. So unfortunate that I felt like I kind of had to drive below what I normally would, just because I had to be so precise instead of just letting it loose with the car. But I mean, congrats to Matt. We always joke around that the tracks that people generally don't like, he's really good at. Another one he's like super good at that just generally people don't like is the Chicago street circuit. And we chalk that up that he lives in Chicago, but apparently he's just good at the tracks that people kind of find boring.
Well, certainly some challenges to this racetrack tonight, but championship-wise, things went pretty well for you, DJ. I don't have the final tally in front of me, but congratulations on another very successful season, and I'm sure we'll see you next week in the GT3 cars at Indy Road.
Yep, you'll see me. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yep. Moving on now to Matt Waldbaum, 2 for 2 tonight at the Hungaroring. Matt Waldbaum brings it home, 2 wins, 2 starts, pole, first, and first. Matt, perfect night in a variety of categories. but had to play defense there in the final moments of race 2. Take us through your perspective looking in that mirror.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting race. I mean, we were playing kind of different strategies in terms of the 1Xs, just kind of worried about kind of doing too many of them. I was trying to be super careful just in case DJ were to get back by me. And then at the end, messed up the chicane just a little bit, and I knew by the time we were going to get to, I think it's turn 12, I knew he was going to be on me and potentially throw it down there, so I squeezed him just a little bit. We were having a good chuckle about it kind of coming across the finish line.
All right, man. Well, hey, congratulations. A strong run for you. Hopefully we'll see you next week running the GT3s at the Indy Road Course. We'll see you there. Thanks for talking.
Thanks, Kyle.
All right, and our Track Night in America raffle was won by none other than DJ Alessandrini. So, again, I think it was weighted by your points position, Connor, but that perhaps no surprise, but we know that DJ will utilize that Track Night in America raffle entry, so that's really cool to see, and a great pricing offered by the DC Region Virtual Racing League. Well, thanks for sticking through us. It's been a challenging night for my health and also for the internet. I know a couple frame drops here and there tonight. I fought Comcast the last time this happened, and I won. They came out and fixed a bunch of stuff, but we're still fighting some consistency issues. So working on that in the background. Connor, your final thoughts here on the points season before we head to some fun racing next week in GT3 cars. I don't have your microphone, Connor. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's on my end. Either way, I'm just going to have to end the stream there without the conversation at the tail end. Sorry about that. We'll see you next week. Indy Road Course with GT3 cars. We'll see you there.